Hey guys, it's Shadowswarm, and 2 videos in one day, but yeah, let's get going, shall we? New free week champion rotation, 2014 preseason, week 1. So this is, week 1 preseason, obviously, for next season. Let's jump right into things, shall we? So this week's free week champions are Corky, Jonna, Kale, Nasus, Warwick, Vladimir, Rennington, Elise, Quinn and Valor, as well as Thresh. So just going to go down the list from left to right, all the way from here, starting with Corky and Jonna, all the way down to Thresh. Let's just read, shall we? Let's just talk, I guess. So Corky, very, very, very good marksman, I guess you can say. He's always been, a very good ADC, just never highly favored. There have always been champions that can do what he does, but better. He did get, slight buff and slight nerf here and there, but overall he's very, very good. He has high health. He's got a lot of base damage. His passive just adds even more damage for him. 10% of his total AD is converted into true damage every time he attacks. So, easy math right here. Say he has 100 AD. He's doing 100, before armor and stuff like that, 100 attack damage, that's what he's doing, and then an extra 10 due to the true damage from his passive. And it just scales up all the way from there, meaning if you have like 300 AD, you're doing, figure roughly, 250 after armor, and then add in 30, because 10% of 300 is 30. Overall, very, very good. He has a good escape, or, he has good escape mechanism as well as the initiation or just chasing mechanism of his Valkyrie. His Phosphorus Bomb did get a range upgrade, so that's very, very good. His ultimate, which the name for, it leaves me for whatever reason, but it's got a nice long range as well. Nice skill shot, does very, very good damage. His Gatling gun just shreds armor like a beast. Very, very good. I mean, obviously, as you can see, his health isn't that high compared to, other champions that we've seen, such as, like, Quinn and Valor. Quinn and Valor actually have more health than Corky, but, as far as damage goes, they're relatively the same. I'll talk about Quinn and Valor in a few minutes here, but, Corky, very, very good, just due to the fact that, 10% of his total attack damage goes into being pure damage. The pure damage is not affected by armor, magic resist, whatever you see that it says, whatever your attack damage is, total, take 10% of that, and you're doing that flat amount. Bar none, regardless of armor, health, resistances, as long as they're not invulnerable, you're still going to be doing that pure damage. That's always, always a plus, especially with Corky. Making items such as, Trinity Force that much better, because you go ahead, cast like Phosphorus Bomb or Gatling Gun, and oh look, your attack damage just, kind of doubled for one hit, and that hurts. But, yeah, very, very good. A little bit squishy, I'm not gonna lie, he's squishy. I did say he has good health, but that depends on the items you get. Definitely squishy, but with Valkyrie, and you just being able to leap out of combat if needed with it, if you have it available, that is, and have the mana for it, it's definitely a good... Well, he's definitely a good champion to play. Then we've got Jonna, who did recently receive a change. Her shield now, I believe it, if I remember correctly, her slows for less base, but she actually can slow for more with her, with it scaling off of her AP now. Her ult, I believe they didn't really change her ult all that much at all. Her shield now scales, I believe, a little better with her AP. And her passive now, it's only within 800 range of her. And her tornado, her tornado's her tornado. This damage it does scales increasingly based upon her AP as well as how long she lets it channel. I believe if she lets it channel for like 5 seconds, it increases by 5% of her AP or something like that. It's weird to explain it, but all you need to know is her tornado. It, if you just kind of cast it and then let it go without like letting it charge, it's going to do very, very minimal damage. But if you let it charge for the full duration, it's going to take like a bigger chunk of your, like a bigger percentage of your total AP and put it towards that tornado, as well as just it doing more base damage. So yeah, very, very good support. The only support in the game that can actually shield a turret. I will repeat that. The only champion in the game who can shield a turret. That makes her very, very valuable as a champion in total. And increases the AD as well of her champions, or of her allies whenever she shields one of them. So again, very, very good potent support right there. Then we've got Kayle, who... what can be said about her? Her ult can save literally anybody within a moment's notice, as long as she has available in there within range. She has a heal that increases the movement speed of whoever she healed for a few seconds. She can go into a ranged form for, I believe it's like 8 or 10 seconds, and it gives her a splash AoE whenever she's, attacking targets. Again, it makes her, go from melee to range. It also, I believe it's her E, lets her, attack from range and does the splash AoE based upon, it's a flat damage and then increases upon your AP. Her heal, obviously, as I said, it's a heal that increases allies' movement speed whenever they get healed by her. Her ult makes them invulnerable for a few seconds, so that's always, always good. And her Q, it's one of the only slows in the game that double dips from your AD as well as your AP. It's your bonus AD as well as your, AP. That's very, very good. And all of her attacks and abilities, all of her attacks allow her, as well as her Q, allow her to stack up her passive, which just increases the amount of damage the target takes from her. It's very, her passive is very, very good. And people just underestimate how much damage she can actually do. She builds something like a Ginsu's Rage Blade and a Hextech Gunblade. She's one of those champions that you just have to look out for, because that's a lot of, AD, that's a lot of attack speed, that's a lot of AP. And then, build into something else like, a Blade of the Rune King or Bloodthirster. Just, it scales ridiculously well. And then you get like a Rabbit on his Death Cap. She's one of the only champions that I would say hybrid is almost, very, very useful. You want a good mix of AD as well as AP. She scales a little better with AP, but she's still very, very good. And, I would recommend her if your team kind of needs that, brute, that fighter to just kind of stand at range for, good 7-8 seconds, and just wail on people, then get into the fray and be that, be one of those targets that, can just soak up some damage and, stand at the back, heal a little bit, put your ult on somebody, save them from dying, and just kind of turn the tides of a team fight. Saving your ADC for another 3 seconds is always, always a good thing, especially if the ADC is somebody like, MF, who's about to channel her ult or is just close to dying, but still in the fray and trying to kill somebody. So definitely a very nice utility-based champion. Sorry about that, you're gonna hear my dog apparently. Then we've got Nasus, who they haven't really changed him all that much. His ult, still a beast. His Spirit Fire still does damage. His Wither, still annoying. And his Siphon Strike, still annoying as hell. I'm sure all of you have seen Nasus, played Nasus, or, played against Nasus. He can be very, very, very tanky and very efficient at doing so, but he has to sacrifice his damage to do so. He's one of those champions just like Quirky, where building a Trinity Force is one of those almost staple items for him. Actually, let me just kind of refresh a little bit here. For Quirky, I would say maybe play 1 or 2 games versus bots, just kind of get that feel of him. Other than that, you should be fine. Janna, it says her difficulty is very, very high. That's due to just the way she works and her mechanics. I would say 1 bot game and you're golden with her. You understand just exactly how she plays after 1 bot game. Kayle, I would say, or Kaylee, however you want to pronounce her, I would say maybe 2 to 3 bot games as well, just to get the feel of how she plays and, how much damage she can actually do and not do, and what her caps are as far as, the scaling of her abilities and how they all synergize together. Nasus, back to him. His Siphon Strike, you do gain more stacks whenever you kill a champion with it, or you kill a large minion such as the cannon minion, or you kill large monsters such as the blue golem, the big wolf, the big wraith, the red lizard, or just the big golem down at the top or bottom, depending on which side you're on. You do get more stacks for that, but you still get stacks regardless. It's just double for the siege minion, the cannon minion, the wolf, the big golem, the elder lizard, and the blue golem. The wither, they did reduce the attack speed the attack speed slow on wither, but the movement speed nerf is, it's the movement speed debuff rather is still there, but it does decay rather rapidly, and it's almost, it's noticeable for the first 3 seconds, and then after that it's like, oh, okay, I'm barely slowed, and then, oh, I'm not even slowed anymore. His Spirit Fire, yeah, it can still hurt, but it's not going to be his primary source of damage unless he's building AP, which I don't know why you would build AP Nasus unless you were playing a mode like, One for All, or, was, well, I don't know, an ARAM. But, yeah, definitely very, very tanky. I would say maybe one to two bot games would, set you golden on how to play Nasus correctly, and just how his, Wither and Siphon Strike and, just all of his abilities synergize as well. Siphon Strike is going to be your bread and butter if you're building AD, which most of the time you will be. You'll be building a mix of, I want to say AD as well as some health, like maybe getting a Randuin's Omen or Warmogs, Sunfire Cape, and getting the Trinity Force, maybe getting, the Gauntlets, the Iceborne Gauntlets, stuff like that to just make you just that kind of beast that nobody can escape from. And, you'll do damage, just not as much as you want. But it won't matter because you'll be able to survive, all the hits they can send out at you. But, yeah, definitely 1 to 2 bot games will never, do you wrong. Then we got Warwick, who, very, very, very good champion. Not much I can say about him other than one of the, in my personal opinion at least, one of the best junglers in the game. He's very good at clearing the jungle with his, with his Hunger Call. I believe it's Hunger and Call. Again, I could get all these things confused. I know it's his W, okay? It's his W that increases his attack speed, and his Q just, it's, his hit pretty much allows him to just clear the jungle very rapidly. Scent of Blood will just allow him to go ahead and, chase down enemy champions, or even get away from them if they're low enough and they're trying to chase him and he's lower than they are. His ult is very good, allows him to just, hold somebody in place for a good 2 seconds and do a decent chunk of damage. His Q, his Hungering Strike, does scale off of AP, but everything, his ult scales off of AD. His passive, it's just a flat, health steal, stacking up to 3 times, but it resets every time you change targets. So say, okay, you killed, Nasus, and then you just went over to start working on Kale, your stacks of your passive will be reset, but that's offset by getting attack speed items, or just, popping your W to increase your attack speed. Just get that 3 stacks going again and just shred through them. You'll be doing magic damage as well as doing, life stealing at the same time. You'll life steal the same amount of damage you do with your passive, which is why a lot of people actually kind of tend to favor AP Wick versus AD Wick. AP Wick, your Q will actually hit a lot harder, and, your ult won't hit as hard, but you'll be able to sustain due to your Q and your passive kind of actually doing a lot more damage because you'll have magic penetration. But As I said, definitely one of my favorite junglers, in my personal opinion, one of the best junglers in the game. Obviously, a lot of other people have a lot of different opinions. I personally think he's one of the better junglers. You don't really see him in lane all that much due to, just the nature of him. He's one of those where, he'll come in, set that gank up, be the good initiator on a gank, ult in, and then just leave somebody there for like 2 seconds, allowing his teammate to catch up and start just railing on the person that Warwick's ulting. So, definitely one of those people to, look out for. I would say one bot game would get you, straightened out with how Warwick really, really works and how his E kind of synergizes rather well with movement speed items such as, a Phantom Dancer, Zephyr, boots of, boots of travel, boots of mobility, stuff like that. So, definitely one bot game, maybe two would set you up right. I would recommend building him AD with a good chunk of health mixed in there as well. So something like a Frozen Mallet. Let's see, Frozen Mallet would be good for him. Maybe a Sunfire Cape as well. If you're getting the Sunfire Cape, then a Wit's End is definitely good, because that'll shred magic resist as well and increase the damage of your Sunfire Cape as well as your passive. Increase the damage of your Q, all of that stuff, and just make you a little more tanky, a little more beefy that your team might need. But definitely recommend building him, primarily AD focus. You won't really be getting crate all that much on him, but definitely stuff like Blade of the Rune King, a Bloodthirster, Last Whisper, etc. Then we got Vladimir, who is just annoying as hell to deal with. He's one of those champions that his passive, it's twofold. His passive, the more bonus health you get on him, the higher his AP goes, and the higher your AP goes, the more health he gets. However, the passive cannot stack upon itself, meaning if you have an extra 500 health from the passive, it cannot convert into AP. That's why you'll see Vladimirs tend to build stuff like a Warmugs and, just kind of be good from there. They'll get the bonus health from Warmugs and then just build AP, straight AP from there. Get stuff like a Zanya's Hourglass, Rabadon's Death Cap, maybe get a Rylai's Crystal Scepter for the, to double dip on both the health and AP. But the bonus AP you get from the passive cannot be converted into health, and the bonus health you get cannot be converted into AP. So you have to be careful with that. I would say maybe 1 to 2 bot games with him as well would work. And as I said, kind of recommend that Warmog's armor, maybe a Sunfire Cape, Rylai's Crystal Scepter, and then just kind of building flat AP. You're not going to be building pure, pure AP or pure health. It's going to be a good mix of both because you're going to need that. You're going to need the bonus health just straight up, and you're going to need the bonus AP straight up as well. He doesn't scale all that well. His abilities scale, I want to say good with AP, but they're not the best. He's just, aside from the scaling with Vladimir, his Q it makes him a monster. He's one of those champions where getting, the Hextech Revolver, it's just very, very good, because you pop your E tied to blood in the middle of a giant mini wave, and oh look, you just damaged everything. And generally his abilities would sacrifice health, but because you have that, spell vamp, and you just hit everything, you actually, you don't lose any health and you did damage, then you Sanguine Pool, and oh look, now you're not targetable, you're doing damage, you're slowing everything, and you're getting health back. His Q is the only ability I believe that he has that doesn't cost health. In fact, it actually regens his health. It does damage, and then it does a set amount of damage, and then it steals a set amount of health after the fact and returns it to you. It does the flat damage, and then the health that's returned to you, it's different than the amount of damage done. So be wary of that, but definitely one of those champions that, Spell Vamp is definitely highly recommended on. Then we've got Renekton, who, very, very potent at just being that, giant, that giant target that you don't want your ADC focusing, because you want your ADC focusing other people like the person that was middle, the other ADC, the jungle, etc. Renekton you'll see most of the time in lane. He does rather decently in the jungle, not gonna lie. He does rather decently in the jungle, but you'll see him in lane. His slice and dice allows him to get in and out of combat rather quickly. If he hits a champion, or if he hits anything rather with his slice and dice, which is his E, I believe, it will actually reset the cooldown on it for a few seconds, allow him to do it again, and then it goes on cooldown. But he's just one of those champions where his Fury mechanic, it adds a whole new aspect to him. He does get lifesteal with his Q after a certain amount of Fury. I believe it's like 50 Fury. Or is it Rage? I forget the mechanic they have for him, but yeah. You'll be seeing Renekton built primarily AD with the little mix-in of health, such as, that Sunfire Cape, maybe maybe the Randuin's Omen, but definitely almost always see a Sunfire Cape on Renekton. You'll be seeing a lot of AD and magic resist items, such as a Hex Drinker, turn that into a Maw of Malmortius. You might be seeing a Aegis of the Legion on him. And, those are just some staple items you can expect from him. He'll be another one of those champions you don't really get crit on, but you can definitely do it. I just wouldn't recommend it. It's not as good for Renekton because of his high base damage and the way his abilities scale. None of his abilities can actually crit, so just be wary of that. But as I said, he'll be one of those champions where he'll cause a lot of disruption in team fights. He's a lot more disruptive than Nasus is, due to the fact that Renekton can actually stun. Both Nasus and Renekton's ults are, they're just about the same. And the only difference between them is Renekton doesn't have a slow, but he has a stun, whereas Nasus has a slow, not a stun. Both of them, Nasus can't get in and out of combat rather quickly, Renekton can. Just, again, comparing Renekton and Nasus, because they're very, very similar. Both of them have a lifesteal mechanic, but Nasus is actually passive, whereas Renekton's, he has to actually have Fury in order to do that. So again, be wary of that. I would recommend maybe 1 to 2 bot games as well, just to get the feel of how Slice and Dice works, how his Meat Cleaver works, and how his ult actually functions. Other than that, very, very solid champion. Then we have Elise. I have not played Elise. I have played against her a lot and played with other people that have played her. She's very, very good. She scales off of AP rather well. The mechanic that, makes people just shudder at the sight of her is the fact that while she's in spider form, she can rappel up and then rappel anywhere else in that giant zone that's bigger than Gangplank's ult. It's a nice big area that she can rappel up to, and then she can choose any target within that zone, that giant AoE. That's about the size of actually Pantheon's ultimate when you see Pantheon coming down, but when you see Elise rappel up, you'll see the zone in which she can only stay in and rappel down in. So people are scared of her for that, as well as I believe in human form her abilities actually do more, or one of her abilities does more damage based upon the missing health you have, and while in spider form her abilities do more damage based upon your current health. I could have it backwards, but I believe that's how it works. I could be, it could be wrong, so don't quote me on that. She does scale, as I said, rather well with AP. You won't really be seeing any AD on her whatsoever. If you do, it might be from like a Ginsu's Rage Blade, or maybe, I don't know why you would get this on an AP champion, but, maybe a Trinity Force? So, yeah. Those would be the only 2 exceptions, I would think. She's rather difficult to play. I would say maybe 2 to 3, maybe even 4 bot games in order to fully understand how she works, how her cocoon works, how her spiderlings work, how, her detonate spider works, all of that stuff, and just the differences between her spider form and her human form. because they're totally different ballparks. It's like playing a Jace melee versus Jace range. It's the same concept, except it's a little different because Elise can actually have spiderlings that absorb damage. Enough said. But definitely recommend building her with a good chunk of AP. A Landry's Torment is always a good option on Elise, especially for the first, I want to say 20 to 25 minutes of a game. Then after that, it's kind of more like, I kind of want to get a different item, maybe get my Rabadon's Death Cap if I don't have that, etc., etc. Or maybe even get a Rowless Crystal Scepter for the slow instead of the, additional little dot. But, definitely very potent champion as well. Again, recommend 2 to 3, maybe even 4 bot games to understand her. Quinn and Valor. Where do I start with them? So, with Quinn, obviously, between both of them, the abilities are the same regardless of which form you're in. However, unlike Elise and Kayle and the other champions that can switch between melee and range, Quinn can only switch to Valor for her ult, whereas Elise can switch to her spider, I believe, at any given time. Jace kind of the same thing between melee and range. Kayle kind of the same thing as well. Again, Quinn, one of the only champions that goes from melee to range for her ultimate. Now, as Quinn, obviously, as I said, you'll be standing at range. Your primary focus as Quinn is to just do that burst of damage that people don't really expect. She's a very, very, very good duelist, and you don't really have to go into Valor form unless you intend on chasing somebody and just being up close and personal, being in that fray that you don't necessarily want to be in, but you have to be in order to actually do sufficient damage and kill your target. Now, Quinn, your Q, it scales both off of AD and AP. However, I don't recommend just building flat AD or AP. I would say get... Trinity Force would be the furthest into AP you'd want to go, because it's half of your AP, and I forget the conversion of your AD that it has, but it's half of your AP that goes into the damage from your Q, which it's also a blind. It's a blind, but it's kind of like... How would I explain it? It's a skill shot blind, not... it's not like Teemo's blind where, you just, poison dart, look, the person's blinded. No, you actually have to hit somebody with your Q, and whoever gets hit, minions or champions, they get blinded for, a few seconds. Your W, it does allow you to see ganks coming in early, both as Quinn and Valor when you activate it. It's just like Ashe's Hawkshot, and the fact that it lasts for a few seconds, for 2 seconds, but it has a relatively long cooldown with a good passive. The passive for it, as Quinn, I believe it's every time you attack a target that has your Harrier mark, you get increased attack speed for, I believe it's 2 seconds, and as Valor, it's just a flat attack speed increase. Your E, it allows you to knock opponents back, slow them, and kind of close that gap at the same time. That's as Quinn. As Valor, it just brings you to the target, but does damage as well. Relatively speaking, okay, say you're Quinn right here, and there's your opponent. You go ahead and E, look, you just knocked into your opponent, and you went from here to, here, and your opponent's, here. So, it closes that gap, allows you to do more damage, and it automatically puts Harrier onto that target. I might be saying that wrong, but it puts your passive onto the target. And again, as I said, your W, if you have that, which you should, that'll also increase your attack speed after you've gone ahead and done that. And your ult switches you between Quinn and Valor. As, if you go into Valor form, you get increased movement speed stacking up while out of combat, kind of like Miss Fortune's passive, and, you turn into melee, obviously. Your Q becomes melee only, So doing that at range versus somebody that's melee, it's stupid. You'd want to get in there with your E first and then Q, so they're blinded. And, when you pop out, say you charge in, you ult in as Quinn, turn into Valor, you E in, and then you pop your ult again, that'll bring down a hail of arrows, doing a nice chunk of AoE damage around you, kind of like Talon's ultimate. Now, I mentioned Quinn's passive, Harrier. So what that does is it scales off of, it does flat damage and then scales off of your, I believe, total AD or base AD. One of those two, or it might be just your total AD plus a percentage of your, might be your base AP, or AD rather, plus a percentage of your total. I'm not entirely sure how that works, I always forget. But, it marks a target, and every time you attack the target that has a nice little reticule around it, or above it rather, you do extra damage to it, and then it syncs up well with your passive from W, and gives you increased attack speed for about 2 seconds afterwards, after you attack that target. I would say, 1 to 2 bot games to learn just how, the forms for Quinn and Valor differ, and how to properly line up your skill shot with Q, how to properly judge the distance for your E, stuff like that. Definitely 1 to 2 bot games would not hurt, and as I said, you're going to be building a lot of AD on her, not so much AP. Again, Trinity Force would be as far as I would recommend for AP. Other than that, you would actually like to get credit items such as an Infinity Edge, get a Bloodthirster, etc. Even an item like a Static Shiv wouldn't be bad. Then, and last but not least, we have Thresh. One of my all-time favorite support champions due to the fact that he's like Pudge in DotA. The only reason he's like Pudge in DotA: 1, he can hook people to him. The only champion that can actually, or one of the only champions that can actually do that. Enough said. It's a skill shot hook, so, it has a relatively long cooldown, but it's damn good whenever you land it. You can go ahead and hook in, knock the opponent back, and just set up a good team fight like that. So that's his Q in a nutshell right there. If you don't hit a target, the cooldown its base, and then if you do hit a target, it's reduced by 4 seconds. So that's good. Then you have your W, which is your shield mechanic. It can shield, opponents or can shield allies rather than not opponents. That'd be stupid if it could shield opponents. But it can shield allies, and if one ally clicks on your lantern, it brings them to you, to wherever you're at within a certain range. Whenever you toss your lantern down, you will see a giant area in which you cannot exit unless you want your lantern to come back to you, or you want your ally to come to you. So, yeah. Also, when you throw your lantern near any souls, the souls will go right to your lantern and thus gain you souls. I'll talk about that mechanic in a minute here. Your E, your Flay, it scales rather... the damage from it scales rather well with your AP. He's one of those champions where some AD, I wouldn't recommend a whole lot. If you're going support, then just go AP. But if you're like, oh, hey, I want to kind of help my team and they don't really need me as a full-fledged support, then just like one AD item would be recommended. Even something like a Bloodthirster would be nice. Just for that lifesteal, or even, something like a Ginsu's Rage Blade wouldn't be a miss either on him. Now, it does good damage, it slows the target, and it can knock them back or forward depending on how you aim it. It's a weird skill shot like that. So if you're aiming it forward, it's going to knock your opponents forward. If you're aiming it backwards, it's going to push them backwards towards you or towards your allies. Now, it also has a second mechanic that's its passive that was taken over from Q a good couple of patches ago. The passive from it scales off of your total AD, and it does add just extra utility to Thresh, extra damage. Not necessarily something you need, but it's always nice, especially for harassment purposes. However, the bonus damage from it, the passive aspect at least, it's only reset after Thresh's auto attack animation has finished. But the longer you wait to auto attack, up to a cap, it does extra damage. So if you're just auto attacking away, not caring, you're doing the bare minimum extra damage. However, if you're waiting a good 3-4 seconds, you're doing the maximum amount of extra damage. So it's one of those, hey, I'm just going to harass every few seconds and just, rack up a little extra damage on a champion, rack up a little extra gold. And his ult, his box, it hurts. It puts up a nice, I guess you can say it's a pentagram? Or not pentagram, a diamond, I guess? It's a nice it's a nice square shaped. I forget the exact shape of it. Rhombus, maybe? No, not a rhombus, but you guys get the point. It's got nice walls that if an enemy champion hits the wall, they will be slowed and take a massive amount of damage for a few seconds. The damage, it's instant, but the slow, it takes a good 2 to 3 seconds to dissipate. It scales, 1-per-1 on your AP. That's why I'm saying AP is very, very good for Thresh. I played a 1-for-all game the other night, and we were 5 Threshes, and we were fighting 5 Ezreals. Our boxes just kind of wrecked their faces. Oh look, Q in, ult, lol, lantern. Oh wait, you can't even hit us because our shields are too powerful. All of Thresh's abilities, except for the passive from his E, scale off of AP, so he's very, very good for that. But his ult, as I was saying, it's a nice slow. It also, it's good damage. Especially if the enemies have no way of escaping it other than just running through the wall. Now, mind you, once an enemy champion has run through a wall, that wall does not come back up. So, it's only one wall. It's the walls that pop up can only be hit once before they're just gone. But, obviously resets every time you pop your ult. So, yeah. But, his soul mechanic that I was talking about just a minute or two ago. That mechanic, it's very, very handy. He's had it since, they released him, but they've changed it since then. The way it used to work is, it would scale on a for every soul you got, it was 1 extra AP and 1 extra armor, all the way down to a cap. I believe it was 0.5 armor, 0.5 AP per soul past 120 souls. But now it's just a base of 0.75 armor and 0.75 AP per soul. Meaning, if you have, what is that? 10 souls at 7.5 armor and 7.5 magic, or 7.5 AP, and 100 souls is obviously 75 AP, 75 armor. So it's good. It's definitely good. You cannot deny the fact that that is a good passive to have. Increases your armor, increases your AP, and thus increases your survivability because it increases the amount of health your shield absorbs, or the amount of damage your shield absorbs. It also increases the amount of armor you have, which makes you even tankier, and makes you only have to worry about, building magic resist and some health. I would definitely recommend 4, if not 5 games as Thresh to just get used to how his lantern works, how his death sentence works, which is his Q, and just how his flay is, how his flay gets targeting and stuff like that. So definitely recommend a good 4, maybe 5 bot games as him, just fully understand everything. But other than that, I like this free week champion rotation, or this week's free week champion rotation. I can't wait to see how many people screw the hell up as, Nasus and Corki and Thresh. Those are the 3 champions I'm going to say people are going to screw up the most on. Thresh, Nasus, and Corki. So yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you like this free week rotation? Do you think, people are going to screw up with different champions? Let me know in the comment section down below. Don't forget to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't, and if you liked the video and want to see more stuff from me, go ahead and click the subscribe button down below. My name has been Shadow as well, and I will talk to you all next time.